like having this conversation with another astrologer about transits to transit so much, but like synastry that you have with past events.
Oh,
my friend who is astrologer, Joe G. He had this really specific synastry with the first synthesizer ever made. I think it was like it's a lot of spirit, and he like loves synthesizers. And just I think the way he ended up wording it even was like it was already hitting his chart. Like the transit of that moment was hitting his chart. Like astrology is like calling to you from the past, almost. Which, when you're thinking in astrological terms, that it gets less kooky, really, because the planets, the motion of the planets are set. They're not going to change suddenly. We can predict them millions of years down the line. Yeah. So I don't know. It's sort of a weird way to think about it. Like your chart pre-existing your birth, in a sense. Like the transit to your chart signified an event that's going to have an influence on you before you're born.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know. I always think of it as being like a record. There's a divot in time that you just kind of fall into. And not to fall into like fatalistic that language, but when there is some kind of event that pings something in your chart, I think that there's a resonance there that just kind of like calls to you like a dinner bell almost. We started talking about this because we were talking about the fact that it's so interesting that the Pluto and Leo generation is going to have at least some of its members see Pluto go into Aquarius. And so it is one of the few generations that lives long enough to experience a Pluto opposition, because when Pluto goes through Scorpio, it is the fastest that it ever goes. Usually it stays in a sign for 20 or 30 years. And in Scorpio, it's closer to 10, 12. So very much faster, which means that the Pluto and Leo generation is going to experience many more signs of Pluto than, someone born with, say, Pluto and Taurus. And, for me, you can't talk about Pluto and Aquarius without me thinking about the French Revolution. And I wondered offhandedly if there was some kind of relevance to the fact that the very old in 1789 might have been of the Pluto and Leo generation. And when the revolution happened in France. I'm looking at the natal chart of the day that the French Revolution started, May 5th, 1789. I wasn't able to find a time, but interestingly, I noticed that Uranus had relatively recently just gone into Leo. Uranus in this chart is at 1 degree of Leo. So there's like this sign-based opposition between Uranus and Scorpio that I find really interesting.
That is, hold on, I'm trying to pull up the chart again that I just had it up.
But the thing that
would probably be true, though. Oh no, I was just going to that would probably be true for, oh boy. Wow, my computer's getting wild right now. It's the Mars-Moon square.
No.
So, it's a saying, or I think this is a whole digression. I don't want to. This is way too off topic, but
we don't have a topic. Just go.
I know. I'm trying. That's too much. Pluto probably would have been at that same roughly point in its orbit. And that's something I want to know more about. If it's always so Pluto has a very elliptical orbit, and during certain points of its orbit, it is actually closer to the sun than Neptune is. And that time where it's closer to the sun than Neptune is more or less corresponds, goes outside of that period, but when Pluto was in the sign of Scorpio, and it was actually the fastest moving that Pluto was. So sort of interesting to me, like the idea of I don't ascribe necessarily to the idea of Pluto ruling Scorpio. I do think Pluto has a special affinity for it.
I agree.
It's probably pretty strong, probably pretty Pluto-y in Scorpio, but it's also like the sign that it spends the least time in, but it's also moving the fastest. So I don't know if that's consistent for Pluto, if that like elliptical orbit rotates a little bit, or if it's just always the fastest when it's in Scorpio. But that would mean that there probably were people during the French Revolution who were Pluto and Leo. And, I should do a little bit of math here, because our old friend, Charles XII, was a Pluto and Cancer. And he was born in about 100 years before this.
Interesting.
In 1682, I want to say. Yeah, 82. So, and he was kind of earlier Cancer, at least mid. So, I mean, it was probably not until a good, at least, good 10 years maybe after that. So there could have been some 90-year-olds or 80-year-olds around that were, or 70. I don't know. I don't know exactly. I'm not looking it up at the moment, but yeah. And you had this radical overturning of power.
Yeah.
That really erupted. It spread across Europe. Like it went everywhere and continued on into, well, technically, I mean, it started. God, now I got to look this up. In the Sibley chart, in the U.S. Sibley chart, Pluto's at Capricorn. It's like at the very end, but I'm wondering if it had retrograded back from Aquarius already, or if it was solidly in it.
Oh, that's interesting. So in the Sibley chart, Pluto's at 27 degrees of Capricorn. And then in the French Revolution chart, it is in Aquarius. It's at 19 degrees of Aquarius. So when the French Revolution started, Pluto was very well into Aquarius at that point.
Yeah.
And Pluto spends 20 years in Aquarius or so, or at least it is going to this time when it goes into Aquarius in a year or two. So roughly doing the math, Pluto probably went into Aquarius 8 years before. I mean, I can look this up.
It's interesting too that they're like we had the ongoing Pluto-Neptune sextile, and they would have been having a ongoing. Though I don't know how ongoing it was. Depends, I guess, where Neptune was in its process. But there was a Neptune trine, Pluto.
That is very interesting. So apparently Pluto went into Aquarius on December 1st, 1778. August 20th. Wait, what? It looks like it went like... Okay, either...
It goes back and forth.
Okay, so it... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pluto went over the Aquarian border, back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn, 5 times in 1777. So April 4th, 1777, May 27th, 1777, January 26th, 1778, August 20th, 1778, and December 1st, 1778. And then it's going to go into Aquarius again on March 23rd, 2023.
That sounds about right for Pluto, because it's the thing with Pluto being so slow, and I think it really ties into Pluto significations, is that it's so thorough. Like it goes over a set of degrees and it goes right back over basically all of them, like most of them. Something I want to get more precise, actually. I would like to know exactly like how many degrees on average Saturn will retrace. Because I know that it's, I was watching it very closely because I have Mars at 17 degrees Aquarius, and Saturn is going to be going back roughly over that part of Aquarius. But I was like, thank God, like Mars, it doesn't make it quite to 17 degrees. So I'm like, oh, it's just like, it gets like almost within a degree. But I'm like, whew, like, thank God. Yet my sun is going to get, my solar sun and Jupiter are going to get, when Jupiter goes into Taurus, I'm going to get a double whammy of Jupiter, which is actually triple. So it's going to go over once, go back over, and then come forward again. So I don't mind getting double doses of Jupiter most of the time.
Assuming you have a good relationship with Jupiter, I tend to have Jupiter and Saturn together because Saturn is the ruler of my Jupiter. So I'm like, oh, Jupiter transit, yay! And then Saturn is like,
yeah,
you have to do the work for that. And I'm like, but I always have to do the work for that. And Saturn is like, yeah, that's exactly the point.
Yep, that's it. Yeah. I mean, Jupiter and Taurus, which of the Earth signs, it's maybe the more comfortable. Obviously, Jupiter is not the fondest of Capricorn or Virgo. And Taurus, I mean, it seems like, well, what is Jupiter going to do in Taurus? But it's not so off. It's just like a little bit, I think it's like a little boring for Jupiter, maybe. It's like, oh, yeah, all right, well, make things grow at a very slow and steady pace. I mean, it's a sign growth. Like Jupiter can do it. It's just not nearly as fast as Jupiter would like. And that's usually the kind of Jupiter transits I get.
When I think of Jupiter and Taurus, I think of Zeus as a sky god who brings the rains, kind of a Mother Earth, Father Sky kind of thing.
Oh, that's nicer. I guess I think of it.
Well, I don't have it, so...
yeah. I mean, it's exactly conjunct my sun, so I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if it's like, oh, it's Cassini. Is that, like, super awesome? Like, maybe? Or did, like, the sun just eat it? Did the sun just eat my Jupiter? And I don't even have one anymore. I don't know. But I always think of, like a southern gentleman, like, sitting on his porch and, like, philosophizing with... the townspeople or something. Like, it seems like a very Jupiter and Taurus kind of thing to do. Like, being Jupiter, but just like in a kind of lazy, relaxed, sort of smaller sphere sort of way. Not. You do see it in a lot of politicians, though. There does seem to be something with Jupiter and Taurus and like political, making connections politically. There's a networking, I think, ability.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That is a whole nother topic. I feel like we were going somewhere with what we'd started talking about with.
We started talking about. Well, we started the recording because we were talking about how different things ping us, and I was looking at the chart for the storming of the Bastille, which, of course, I've now lost. And here it is. And I was noticing that Mars on the day of the storming of the Bastille, assuming we have this chart right, it's a C Rodden reading, so I'm kind of iffy, but I think that we can say that the degrees of Mars are okay. Mars is at 8 degrees of Gemini, and my natal Mars is at 9 degrees of Gemini. So I was like, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier about resonance, and I'm not sure how exactly I resonate with the storming of the Bastille, but there's a part of me that's like, yes, not because of the January 6th nonsense. I was not there, and I did not approve. But
yeah, there's a lot of head cutting and stuff, but. I don't know, there is, at least at the top of this Bastille chart, there is a Venus in Leo, exactly conjunct Uranus. and kind of close to Jupiter. Actually, very close to Jupiter. It's flying to
2 degrees.
Jupiter. Yeah, and you, I don't know, Venus in Aries, like on an angle. Something about that. It's fiery Venus, an inflamed Venus.
Yeah, that Jupiter is opposite my moon. That Pluto is within 1 degree of my Jupiter. 18 degrees of Aquarius. What else have we got here? The moon is 2 degrees off from my Venus.
Wow. Have you said you took a course on the French Revolution? Is it always had a special appeal for you?
It didn't. I took it because I needed to take a class because I had a very weird year in my college education. I had to come home after my freshman year, or in the middle of my freshman year, actually, because I had a really bad knee accident and I needed reconstructive surgery. And this was before Obamacare. So at that point, once you turned 18, you either needed to have employer's insurance or you needed to be in college and under a certain age in order to be on your parents' insurance. So even though I needed to have one of my legs literally sawn in half and put back together again, I still needed to be in school that year. I ended up going to this all-girls Catholic college for a year because it was close to where my parents lived. And that year I was just like, this is going to be a throwaway year. Like, I can't concentrate. I'm on opiates and driving, which is not something that I want to be thinking about these days. And I just, was like, okay, I'm going to phone it in because this isn't going to matter for my transcripts. And I was like, okay, I'll take a class in the American Civil War and I'll take a class in the French Revolution. And
it sounds like a great year. I love history, so I took a lot of courses like that. I didn't take those specifically, actually, because I spent so much time studying American history. I was just like, I want to learn about other places in America. America sucks. No, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I love history too. I was one course off for being a history major. I think I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I got to my senior year of college and my advisor was like, okay, you were one course off of a psychology degree, an English degree, or a history degree. You need to pick one now and you need to stick with it. And I'm not going to let you change your major again. And I literally threw a D6 and it landed on English. So that's how I ended up with an English degree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems more fitting. I think that's like where your chart will totally kick in. If you're making decisions on like dice rolls, like your chart will just decide for you because you have Mercury like on your midhead.
Yeah. Yep. I feel like those three, I don't know if you like knew that you were going to do history or if you bounced around a lot, but I feel like English literature. Oh, it looks like you have disappeared. Well, I'll keep talking. English literature and history and psychology. I feel like those three together are like me reaching for astrology and not really knowing. What I was looking for. So I'm going to pause here and we'll see what happened.
Oh, you want me to segue? Are you okay?
I'll do it.
Okay.
So if you listen this far, you know that things have been especially chaotic today. And part of what we're doing with this podcast is that we're both trying to get over our perfectionist tendencies. And so we are recording this live and then we're just putting this up on the internet, even though both of us are perfectly capable of editing audio and video. So we are doing this at a scheduled time, which is not the time that I would have chosen, except for the fact that we have this thing where we meet up on Thursday afternoons. And I think it's actually kind of cool that this podcast is going to be like a picture of what different transits look like as we go. Yeah. And as we're recording today, this is an example of an electional chart that I never in a million years would have chosen, and I don't do much with electional astrology. So Pluto's at 27 degrees of Capricorn right now. Mars is at 26 degrees of Aries, and the moon is at 29 degrees of Cancer. So they are forming a cardinal T-square, which Pluto and Mars, not what I would have chosen.
I mean, no, I mean, I wouldn't choose it either. I think that's the thing with electional astrology is that you can be very, very picky because you're choosing. But sometimes you just have to settle for what, the best chart that you can get at any given moment.
Yeah.
Actually, my trick for actually being able to do it was like literally just try to do the things that I would normally do, but limit, like I give myself within these like this 6 hour period, what's the best of these like 4 rising signs? That made it a lot easier. It's like, I'll just pick the best one. I don't have to be a perfectionist with the chart. It's just, really got to narrow those times down because you will go nuts trying to find the perfect chart and you just can't.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes you have to choose between one annoying thing and like one shitty thing and another thing, but Mars Pluto, like I wouldn't, it's not the worst thing in the world. I have like it's separating a bit, but I have a Mars Pluto square and, I have had a bit of a temper from time to time, but I feel like it has made me, rather than just being like an asshole to everybody and just like letting it rip whenever I want to, I'm very careful and discerning about when I get angry or like act angry, do Mars on people. So I don't like to do Mars on people in particular. It's not pretty, which Mars isn't pretty. And, most of us are trying to control our Mars in some way, I hope. But
unless for athletes, which I mean, I suppose is another way of controlling it. But
oh, absolutely, it's probably one of the best ways of controlling it. Honestly, you give the Mars an outlet. Exercise is one of the best things I've ever done for myself. I don't do it enough, but I run regularly, and I have a punching bag and stuff. It's Mars remediation.
I need to get a punching bag of some kind, or at least start using it at the gym. Like
it's the best.
Mercury on the midheaven in Aries, like I need something like that.
And you have the Mars in Gemini, so the mutual reception, but it's also Mars is sextile your ascendant. So I like, it's making me think of literally like a pugilist. Like Mars in Gemini.
You get me into a fight verbally, and that's exactly what it's like.
But I mean, when you burn off all that Mars energy, it's like, finally, I can like actually chill.
What is this burning off the Mars energy? I've never experienced this before.
What is this you speak of?
You can get rid of it? Really?
I am Mars energy. You get tired. Mars gets tired. Thank God. Saturn will just fuck with you your whole life by creating just walls. It'll slowly loosen up most of the time. But Mars at least gets tired. Mars like won't fuck you up all the time. Has times of day or like, when it's gonna hit something strong, then it might be more of a pain in your ass. But Mars is usually not 24/7 for most people, at least.
Yeah. Or when it is, that's when you start running into accidents because you get clumsy.
Oh yeah.
It's like I'm convinced that the whole Mars ruling accidents thing is just that Mars gets tired. And so Mars is like, well, I've got to express myself somehow. So here, why don't we have you trip over something? That'll be easy for you.
Yeah. 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 I like, did you ever take, since we're talking about courses with Austin Coppock, apparently, did you take you took the remediation course, right?
I took the remediation course. Yeah. That is my favorite all-time astrology course. Like it is the best course I've ever taken.
It is really good. I think you will love the Astrology of Generations. Maybe even more. It's really good. But the one thing that I like always remember from that one is the Orphic hymns, which I haven't memorized them yet, but I try to say my "Don't Hurt Me, Bros" to Mars almost every day. But I do read that one quite a bit because it's I don't want Mars to hurt me. It's like I feel like I'm it's my aspect malefic, and it's all over my chart. So
me too.
but I think one of the maybe the remediation elements too is I think of like a bully in high school when I think of Mars sometimes. Just like kind of an asshole who's going to do what they want. But how do you like work with a bully? You could become a bully. You could become one of the bully's disciples, or you can just make the bully respect you, like not, cower in fear at the bully. You stand up to it, and even if the bully actually kicks your ass, if you fight back, usually the bully will respect you enough afterwards, or not want to fuck with you because you're not an easy target, So I sort of like to apply that to remediation. Like, I don't have to be Mars, but I can be somebody that Mars, won't want to pick on, maybe.
Yeah. Every time I do Mars remediation, it's like, all right, so your neighbors have really bad boundaries and you're going to stand up to them about it. Like every single time. And it's just like, I used to be really, really good about doing Mars remediation on Tuesdays. And I was just like, okay, what? I'm not learning the lesson and I'm going to stop asking you to teach me this lesson now because I know what it is and I'm just not doing it. So let's just not talk about it for a while.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess speaking of Mars Pluto, I feel like that is what it'll do is like, I feel like sometimes like, I'm usually pretty good at like, oh, you did something that kind of annoyed me. I can say like, oh, please don't do that. I don't appreciate that. Be polite or whatever. And then if it gets to like this like zone in the middle, it's like I either don't want to say anything or I want to like destroy their souls. Not literally, but I want to like
Yikes.
I want to yell at them, and I'm like I don't really want to yell at them. I feel like everybody's gonna start thinking of this like person that yells at people all the time, but I don't actually. I almost very rarely yell at people. But go ahead.
I can say that you've never yelled at me.
Yeah. Well, because I think about yelling literally. I think about like the dad voice, right? Like when you're, I don't know, your dad specifically, like my dad. Not that I saw him all that often, but he yelled at me like 2 times, I think. And it was terrifying. And that's like like when you bring out the dad voice, that's like that's the nuclear weapon that you have maybe with your kid or what that you want to have. Like if you only use it a couple times, then it's scary. And then it actually is effective and then you don't have to. So, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's how my Mars Pluto plays out.
I feel like you just explained why I have Pluto in the 4th house. Yeah. My dad definitely had the dad voice, and it definitely came out like a couple times a day. Oh. But I wasn't one of those kids who was like, oh, he's always yelling, so I'm just not going to listen to it. Like it felt like, living at Chernobyl or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, but then it's like I don't know, it's like you don't necessarily get the results necessarily that you want. Or you bury them, which is what Pluto, like you end up, it's like my thing, and I think about it with parenting all the time, I think about it just with people. It's like the more you push against something with somebody, especially a kid, the more you might get the behavior that you want, but you're actually making that thing this like big distorted mess underneath inside. Like if you try to say, no, you can't do this, then it turns into some twisted, like not necessarily twisted. I'm being a little extreme right now, but it turns into like
You're talking about Pluto.
Yeah, exactly. It turns into something messed up in the psychology, buried that's like trying to express itself in other ways. But if you're just like, you make space for stuff, give it like an outlet, it like doesn't need to be so much. And maybe that's my living with Pluto lessons or something. I don't know. I feel like that's what I think of when I think about Pluto. Intensification.
Oh, yeah.
Or burial, like nuclear, like jugs of nuclear waste.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at your chart a few minutes ago, but um, you've got, oh, interesting. You don't have the Pluto Saturn thing like I do. You got Pluto and the moon in Scorpio, and
Mhm.
you just barely have Uranus in Capricorn instead of it in Sagittarius like I do. So that's
Mhm.
so interesting. You're part of that Uranus Saturn thing, but you missed the Uranus Neptune thing. I mean, depending on the orbs you use, obviously, but that's interesting. I was just gonna say something about our experience of Pluto and Saturn in Scorpio as being like, the radioactive people who were buried in lead coffins. I've
Mm.
been studying Chernobyl for those who are just tuning in.
Yeah.
But you've got the moon instead, so it's like, the other side of polarity. Instead of having Saturn there, you've got the moon. That is so interesting.
Yeah. Because on the one hand, like Saturn's probably better equipped as a planet to like deal with Pluto shit. But I guess
Hmm.
I like to think about it with like Venus and Aries or something, with like a soft planet in a harsher sign. Uh,
Hmm.
there's that element of like, maybe Scorpio needs some love too, right? Maybe Aries needs a little bit of love too. They may not
Yeah.
be receptive to it, but there's like, there's a job, I think, for the planet there, even if it's very uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I use benefics and malefics, but I don't believe that any planet is ever doomed in a sign. One of the things that annoys me more than anything else is um, when astrologers get really giddy about a chart being an epic disaster. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you're talking about an event, like, you and I were just bitching about the fact that, we've got that T square involving Mars and Pluto, and it's been difficult. But, and it was difficult. We have some objective things going on here that we can talk about, as evidenced by the fact that there is a break in the middle of this recording now. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about a person that way, or a person's chart that way, I think that that is absolutely unforgivable. Like, talk about psychological damage. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and two, it's like, I don't know, I'm speaking of they, even though, I don't know, I'm like I, I don't know. I don't know where I end up falling. I feel like I'm finding the people that I fall in with, right? So, I don't know. I guess I couldn't like say that I stick in like a one group, but like you want to call
Mhm.
yourself something, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah, sometimes, and this is actually one thing that would sometimes irk me a little bit about the way like traditional astrologers will talk about charts or the people. It's like when they start using the native about somebody who's like in the conversation or like in, I don't know, like a really specific person. It's like, I don't know,
Mhm.
like then it's like it almost gives them permission to like get really harsh with their
Mhm.
delineations of like, and this is how you die, or this is the horrible fate that you have in store. And they're not even right most of the time. I don't know. Like they might like get the ballpark. Like this is more difficult. This is, you know,
Mhm.
less difficult. But I don't know. I have not been able to find this precision that seems to keep you there. But I also like I wonder like philosophically. And actually, I have friends like who are more on this end of the spectrum, but philosophically, I don't know how you. Um, I don't know, like live without hope. To me, it almost
Yes.
hope. Maybe if you have an awesome chart or something, but like
Mm.
I don't know, like constantly expecting disaster, knowing at least in your mind, thinking that you know like the outcome of like this area of your life. Um, that may be bad because we all have like a bad chunk of our chart, wherever
Mhm.
the difficult planet is. But um, I don't know. I I guess I like leaving room to be surprised seems like essential for mental health. But I don't know.
Mhm. And I think in a lot of ways it depends on the person. I was having a conversation with a couple of astrologers the other day about zodiacal releasing. And we've all done research on zodiacal releasing. Some of the three of us who are in this conversation have done an incredible amount of research on zodiacal releasing. We've run people's entire biographies through zodiacal releasing. And there are some people, you run their chart through zodiacal releasing, and it is incredible. Every beat is something dramatic, and it is beautiful, and just you can see the system working like a well-greased machine. And then there are other people, and I am one of them, who, I was like, okay, this is something that everybody respects a lot. It was well used. It was well used like in the medieval period, right? Like that was when it was really at its heyday. I was like, okay, I am going to figure out how this works for me. And I actually kept one of those 5-year diaries where you write like a couple of sentences every day. And I went back and I ran like all of the short little zodiacal releasing, like a loosening of the bonds and all of that stuff. And like, it didn't match. It didn't make sense at all. And I did it with fortune and I did it with spirit. And it was like a discordant song.
Yeah.
But then when I use annual perfections or for Daria, that fits everything.
And this is kind of the way I think about it, honestly, at this point, because I had the exact same experience with zodiacal releasing. It actually ended up being like my, I don't know, the equivalent of like, if you could call like predicting the future like an opiate of some kind. It's like heroin or something. It was like my wake up call. It was like my rock bottom or something with it, where I was like studying zodiacal releasing so hard and like running into this exactly, like finding these charts that are like, whoa, like this is incredible. But then running into other charts, including my own, that like it didn't fit at all. Like it didn't seem to work. And it's like going down these rabbit holes and like trying to like, well, maybe, there's this exception, or like maybe there's this exception to it. And like trying to make this technique work so hard, but like at the same time, it like giving me deep anxiety. I don't know. It's like, well, if it does work, because like I will go into a period, I think when I'm like 36 or something, where it's an Aquarius period. So it's like my out of sect malefic for 30 years or whatever. And I'm like, why do I want this technique to work so bad? Like, what am I getting out of this? Like, is this even what I want? Like, do I want to predict my own future? Do I want, what if I don't like what I find? What if I don't like what I see?
Yeah.
Do I even want to live in a world where where your life is perfectly timed to a T like that? I don't know. I almost, and this is not my idea necessarily. I think it was Robert Hand who like, during one of his lectures, like that got me like thinking about it like this. But what did he say? It was like, basically saying like, like it may not necessarily be a great thing to have a chart that is like so specific and like so descriptive of your fate. Like, do you necessarily want to have like a fate? Maybe like not, we don't all have like a really hard fate. Maybe maybe it's certain charts and maybe there's something about the chart that responds to that technique, responds to zodiacal releasing, or there's elements of it that we don't know about yet. Or maybe it's just people's like charts respond to different timing techniques. I honestly, like I'll throw a few different ones at people's charts usually to see like, okay, this I think is your technique, so we'll use this one more. Perfections seem like pretty universal, though they're not always like super precise. For Daria, I've had some interesting stuff with. It doesn't seem to work for everybody, but and I'm sort of fine with that. I don't know. I don't like need this like super, Swiss Army knife of timing techniques necessarily.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I'm not a big timing techniques astrologer in general, but the thing that I love about Ferdaria is that I find that the year Firdars are like a mix for me. Sometimes they resonate, sometimes they don't. I actually had my first house year, my 12th house year, it predicted that I would miscarry, and that was absolutely right. Yeah. Um, it also predicted that I would finally get pregnant, and that did not happen. So it is a mix. But the thing that I love about Ferdaria is that it's not so much the prediction, it's that you can kind of see a general outline of the life that explains things that are otherwise inexplicable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a very, very solar person. I think we've talked about this a bunch on the podcast, but I've got Leo rising. I have the sun in the 10th house. I've got Jupiter square the sun, Saturn opposite the sun, the North Node on the sun. Like the answer to every question in my chart is the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And I am in my moon chapter right now in my 30s. And so one of the things, I can't remember who said it. I don't remember. But I didn't come up with this. Somebody said that in Ferdaria, the sun really does not like to serve the moon. And so when you're in a moon chapter and you're a solar person, you're a day baby, or you're a day baby who's also a sunny person like I am,
Mm-hmm.
The sun is in a position where it's trying to shine, and the moon is like, nope, it's still dark. It's still nighttime. It's still nighttime for like 10 years straight.
Yeah.
And when I went into my moon Ferdaria period, I started to deal with horrific depression for the first time in my life. And it has been a comfort to me to know that every time I have something that pushes me into depression, and it's usually, feeling like I'm running after something and I just can't get it, like the sun will just never come out for me. I'm like, okay, I'm not a predictive astrologer in that I don't believe that, I can predict that things are suddenly going to take over when I leave my moon Ferdaria period. I mean, especially since I'll be going into a Saturn one. But knowing that it's normal, and knowing that if it doesn't change until I'm like 40, it's on schedule and it's okay, is a big comfort to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I think that's where maybe the comfort comes for people using predictive astrology.
Mm-hmm.
I guess like I ran into the issue maybe of like, I don't know, people maybe like prediction when it's telling them something good. And, if you don't have a chart that's like constantly describing awesome things, then it's like, well, I don't know, maybe there isn't a lot of comfort in that. But I guess I get that too. It's like, I don't know, the sense that you're on the right track or you're doing the right thing. I think making meaning out of, his name, Frankel,
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, who was saying that was like this whole thing. It's like, suffering, when you can make meaning out of suffering, then suffering becomes useful, or it becomes meaningful. Duh. I don't know. It's like you make anything meaningful and it feels okay. What I don't, and it's actually the part of traditional astrology that really drew me in, was that very practical bent. Like I like the spiritual component. I like all that stuff. I just don't like it too woohoo out there. I like it to be rooted in the world, or just sound like a human. I don't know. I like to think that I could say the things that I'm saying about astrology to like, I don't know, a doctor, and they wouldn't necessarily just assume that I'm totally insane. Which, you know, there's some astrologers who are like, you know, while I might be personally a little bit interested in what you're saying, you do sound like, I don't know, to the from the outside perspective, that's a little out there. Sorry, as other astrologers, I don't know.
I'm just over here looking at where your Neptune is.
Of course, it's in Capricorn. It's trying my sun, you know. I'm connected to that Neptune in Capricorn, and I've been looking for. I love that spiritual shit, right? I'm all about it. But it's always been like in the closet for me, or something, or like. And okay, this is what I wanted to say when you're talking about going to school, and you're trying to find different grades, trying to figure out which track to go on. I had 7 different majors at different points. They were all different types of social science. And yeah, I kept changing my mind. I always loved history. And I was like, was reluctant about like doing it. I don't know. But astrology really ended up being like an interdisciplinary course or interdisciplinary degree for me in a sense, because it brought so much of that together for me. It was like, oh, it's everything that I liked about all this, but it's like has like all this meaning and stuff that I've been like lacking. Is the Pluto and Scorpio's generation, especially with Neptune and Capricorn, which pretty much all Pluto and Scorpios have. It's that like, what do I believe in? You know, what is there? What has meaning? It's like we don't trust any of it anymore. And I think that's maybe, and probably as we're getting to the age that we are now, we'll be the youngest Pluto and Scorpio, like 95, 96. So that'd be like 20.
95, they're about,
27, 20. Yeah, they're all about to have our Saturn returns. I think Saturn and Pisces would be the last Saturn that had Pluto and Scorpio with it. After that, I don't think there's going to be a Pluto and Scorpio left that has not been through the gamut of like looking for meaning and shit, and like being disappointed or jaded or disillusioned. And I think to find that, obviously, I mean, how big like witch stuff has gotten. Look how big astrology has gotten, and why does why is that so? Why does it speak? I think maybe to our age group so well. Is that it's real. It's like it's Capricorn. Like, yeah, it doesn't have to be everything, but some amount of this woo-woo spiritual shit is real. Yeah, I remember like sitting with that for the first time. Like, whoa! Like I'd been like reading astrology stuff and like liking it, and I got like kind of obsessed with it. But I remember hitting that point where I was just like, whoa, astrology's real. It was like being like learning that Santa Claus was real, or learning that like, you know, that it was like this magical moment of like, what the fuck? How is this real? Like, how is it really though real? It's not really real, but what is really real? I don't know. But it's like you can actually you can like say shit, and it's not just like pulling shit out of your hat. It's like, I know what the symbol means, and I can speak to a total stranger about it, and I'll know what to say to them, and they'll be like, yep. And you know, while it doesn't get as precise as maybe I started thinking that it did for a bit, but that's incredible. It's like real magic. And I feel like I want to like, I don't know, I want to like bring it to everybody. It's like, I feel like you need this astrology, right? And like, I want to deliver it in a package that's not going to freak them out. I don't know. Cause I don't know. Were you ever like a closet, like astrologer, or a closet? Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Ada Pembroke isn't my legal name, and there's a reason for that. Like, As much as I think it's a lot more astrologer-y than my legal name, which sounds ironically much more like a stripper name.
No.
Yeah, like, I mean, I really, really struggled with the fact that, my evangelical parents were looking at my blog as I was exploring astrology in the beginning. And
I love that part.
when
Only sort of kidding.
I wish, like, I wish I had the balls for that, but yeah, it was really hard for me to really come out as an astrologer. And there are days where I meet someone new and I'm just like, I don't have the spoons to deal with this. I'm telling them that I'm a designer and it's not a lie. Like that, I just can't talk about astrology today.
I know I use most of my real name. I was born with like a hyphenated last name, and I, been wanting to change it for my whole life, but I kept running into issues with it because it's hard to change your name. But I was born in the 80s, so it was very popular to hyphenate last names. Granted, they didn't totally think it through, because when you get married, it's like, oh, do we do your hyphenated name, or what do we do? I don't know. What do you do with your kids? Do we hyphenate their name with another name? And granted, it's supporting a patriarchal naming system, but we got to do something. I don't know. I'm not anti hyphening, but speaking from the person who's from a perspective of a person who grew up with a hyphenated last name, I'm against it. I totally get it for like married women who want to keep their last name, or just keep your last name. That's fine too. You can choose it for yourself. I just don't do it to your kid, please. It may be too late for some of you, but it's okay. They'll forgive you. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah. I think I remember what I was saying.
You were asking me if I had a period where I was kind of like in the closet about astrology.
Yeah. Oh, well, I was just about to say though too is so one of my friends' kids asked me, my son's friend's parent asked me, like, what do I do for a living? And like, I had given myself talks before. I was like, I'm going to be astrologer. Like, there's like something for me where I just need to be able to own it to everybody. But yeah, I sort of folded it, like, I do consulting. I was like sort of like kicking myself afterwards, like, I'll just own it. You don't actually care what people think, really? It's like, yeah, I do. I don't know.
One of the problems that I run into continually is that people don't know what it means for you to be an astrologer. Like, you get the people who just assume that you're working a 1-900 line, which, there are some good people who do that, and bless them. And then there are other people who don't know the difference between an astronomer and an astrologer. And they'll be like, oh, so you work at NASA?
Yeah.
And this was really bad when I lived in Silicon Valley, because NASA was actually right there. And so they would just, start talking to me as if I worked at the local NASA office. And, sometimes I would just go along with it because, I'm one of the more science-y astrologers, and so I can keep up sometimes. But, when I couldn't, or when I was in a bad mood and I was like, that's not what astrology is, they would be like, okay, so what is astrology? Explain all of astrology to me in 15 seconds. It's like,
I know there's like a pressure to prove it or something, or like a pressure to, I don't know. And like, I don't do well under that specific pressure.
Oh, no, me neither.
I feel like you have to like start from a place of just being open to it or something. Because you can sort of shoot it down. Granted, you give me a long enough time with somebody, I'm sure I can convince them. But you do get those people who are just very entrenched. But I feel like there is, and I think it's already happening to a large degree, but like, I don't know, there's like somewhere in between like the traditional school, which is like maybe too practical, but also too maybe zealous or something in in the belief that of the specific objective realness of it or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the kind of too flimsy woo-woo end of it. And I like have this vision of just like this really comfortable for me, but I think comfortable for a lot of people, honestly, because I hear people like qualifying themselves all the time when they say something like, oh, like you're one of them too. You do it a lot when you're talking about astrology, even. You've been doing it long enough to where it doesn't, it's like integrated and you don't feel like you need to do it all the time, but like you do it. I notice I like detect it and it's like, yeah, you come from that skeptical background. Like,
oh yeah.
And I feel like I almost want to like, Tristan, Astrology Hotline, he was in a skeptical witches group, which was like almost a little too skeptical in my mind from what I learned about it, from my personal taste. But like I like that. I don't know. It's like marrying the skepticism with astrology. There's like a world there that I don't know, want to live in or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When I taught my first astrology class, I was very, very particular that everyone go into the class treating it like an empirical thing. Mm-hmm. And I was inviting people to say continually that this doesn't match my experience. So the class, and I'm hoping to revisit it soon, called Moon Mood Workshop. Basically what it is you spend an entire lunar cycle with the moon, paying attention to your moods, journaling about them, mood tracking, and looking for correlations between the moon's sign and your moods. And I was constantly like, okay, this is what the astrologers say is supposed to be happening. You will pay attention to this to compare, mm-hmm. but your experience trumps what they say. Yeah. And, my students came out of this experience with a much better understanding of what their cycles are with the moon. And they matched. Like, mm-hmm. if I was doing a research study, it wasn't double blind or anything. And, the standards scientifically were shit. But mm-hmm. It ended up proving astrology. But, even if I was going to teach this again today, and I first taught it 3 years ago, I would still tell people, don't just match your mood to what, this worksheet says your mood is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, one, there are a ton of extenuating circumstances that would cause you to feel differently because of what's going on in your own chart. And also, like, I don't like the idea of teaching people to be bossed around by the planets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then you're afraid.
Really unethical to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're afraid, you're disempowered. And if we need anything right now, going back to Pluto, apparently this is the Pluto episode. If what we need right now is people who are empowered, because the people who are empowered right now need to be challenged.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't know. Maybe this is in the process of being articulated or something. I don't know. Maybe when Pluto gets out of Capricorn or something. I don't know. I feel like the outer planets are like doing their work in each sign, like changing the sign even. I don't know. But like wonder if like, because I maybe come from that specific little slice of the Pluto in Scorpio generation that has Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus all in Capricorn. Mm-hmm. So they're all kind of in the soup to me. Neptune's a little bit further away, I think, like you mentioned, but like it's I don't know. It's like I feel like it's Saturn is in charge, and he's like trying to rein in these like wild outer like these ideas that are like a little too out of this world. But mm-hmm. like I kind of want to. There's some good shit here, and let's bring it back to Earth. Let's bring it down to where we can make space for it while mm-hmm. still being sane, scientifically minded human beings. Like don't want to like live in Never Land. Mm-hmm. Even like amongst astrologers, there's like the really practical, traditional, hardcore astrologers, and then there's like the, astrologers that will just kind of make stuff up or just put a rose-colored slant on everything, of course. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I want to. I like the way you were describing it. It's like, you come first before the astrology. Like you, I don't know. Like you're perspective comes first, reality comes first. Not that but where astrology and reality overlap, the fact that it overlaps at all is a fucking miracle. It's incredible.
Right?
It means so much to me, and it can mean so much. It's just like you don't have to like take the whole enchilada and be bought and sold and join a cult or something to get maybe the value of there being meaning. If that makes sense.
That makes sense.